Welcome to Concerns of a CIO in Regards to Security by Stephanie Jackson. We're going to start with a quote. Cisco Systems estimates that the number of devices connected to the internet will reach 50 billion users by 2020. With the number of increasing users coming up at such a rapid rate, CIOs of large and small companies need to make sure that they protect not only themselves, but also their customers from information security breaches or attacks. First, we're going to start off with what is a security breach. According to the North Carolina Department of Justice, a security breach is defined as the unauthorized release of unencrypted or unredacted records or data containing personal information. This could be the person's name, first initial and last name. This could also include various other information. The acquisition of the encrypted data is only a breach if a confidential process or key needed to unlock the data is also breached. Unauthorized individual would gain access to personal information that could cause harm to others. This could include the social security or the TIN number for an organization, passport, driver's license, or state ID number, checking, savings, or other banking information, credit debit card numbers, PIN numbers, fingerprints, digital signature. The possibilities are truly endless of what a hacker could do if they were able to gain access to one of these pieces of information. Now, data security itself isn't a problem just for large companies. Smaller companies that are just getting started are also at risk as well. They need to ensure that everything that they use on a daily basis is going to be secure to protect themselves and their customers. This would include the hardware, software, the network, and the platform, and then also the user behaviors of their employees. Long-term effects of security breaches that we've seen in the past. This breach could really be an infringement on customers' trust dealing with the business. If the customer doesn't feel that their information is going to be secure, then they would no longer work with that company. Implications from information being released. We saw it not too long ago. Target had a breach of a lot of customers, especially on the after Thanksgiving Day sales, where their credit card information had been taken, and they were seeing a lot of unauthorized charges. So Target was really put in the spotlight and quite possibly suffered from some reputation being tarnished. They had a lot of bad publicity, and it's putting them in the news negatively. Loss of customers over the long run. Customers may not shop at Target going forward since they feel that Target was allowing their personal information to be breached. They may prefer to shop at other competitors. Now, Target may have also suffered from distrust in their IT vendors themselves, so it really is a domino effect once a breach of information has happened. Everyone is at risk, even the CIO. The thing with the security breaches is it doesn't have to be from an outside source. Careless employees can make a mistake. Even employees that are not careless can make a mistake. Risk can really come from cognitive bias from the open source intelligence. The intelligence produced from publicly available information of employees analyzing information regarding breaches, past hacker attacks, private audits, and due diligence activities. Looking at this information, every employee is going to have some type of bias towards what they're looking at. So this bias itself can lead to false conclusions and unwarranted fear, uncertainty, and doubt going around the organization and ultimately spilling over to the customers. Anyone can make a mistake. We've learned that from several of the past breaches. It doesn't have to be intentional or malicious in intent, but it can come from the inside or the outside and be solely based on bias as well, based on information that is being analyzed. People are calling what we're currently living in the golden age of surveillance. We're reaching a point in our society where everything is being saved, from our social media activities. When someone logs onto Facebook, based on who they're friends with, their likes, things they comment on, this is used to determine preferences for better marketing. This information technology will show companies where customers go, what their preferences are, who their friends are, relationships that they have established, and their various interests. With Google and Amazon, Google remembers your recent searches, and Amazon remembers your past purchases so they can make recommendations for future purchases. The point here with this particular slide is that every action on the internet is essentially being watched, and we are under constant surveillance, whether we realize it or not. Now, there are some flaws in the industrial control systems. One example is the information system put out by 3S Smart Software Solutions out of Germany. They had a piece of software running on an industrial control system with 200 vendors that they found out contained a vulnerability that allowed hackers to execute commands on the system without the need for authentication. This would allow the hacker or attacker to start, stop, and reset certain programs. They could dump the memory, and they could get information about the tasks and programs that were being run. They could copy, rename, delete files on the system, or they could set, delete online passwords. So once a hacker infiltrates the system like that, there really is no stopping what they can and can't do by deleting files, accessing passwords, and whatnot. All of these 200 vendors were put in serious danger, not only for their process and procedures, but also their customers. Other attacking examples, phishing schemes is nothing new. It's more personalized in nature. A phishing scheme, when a hacker does research on one employee, and they send a malicious email that's piquing interest. The employee would open the email, and then the company network would be infected with malware. The hacker would have access to the IT network, and then they could also do cross-contamination from that malicious email when the employee goes to open the internet browser on the intranet. One example I had found was a nighttime security guard working with the IT system received an email suggesting special insurance rates for families with 3 children or more, and he had 4 kids. So by opening the email, the hacker was able to access the IT information by just doing a little bit of research on one specific person and finding out that they had 4 children. A big example is the Apple fiasco that happened back in February this year. Apple told the public that there was a major SSL security vulnerability, and that there was a bug that was causing improper validation of the certificate and letting iOS fail. The communications themselves weren't being encrypted, so hackers could intercept or alter the communications that Apple users were sending, or they could access login. They were doing this by utilizing the man-in-the-middle attack. What that means is that the attacker themselves acts as a proxy. They're able to read and insert data in the intercepted communication, and then once it goes out, then they're able to alter how things continue to go from that basic interception by accessing and acting as a secure certificate. Now, the question that has been facing Apple is, the software was tested, but why was it not caught? This really goes back to we developed this false sense of security, and we need to continually be on the watch for possible security threats. One of the biggest things in the news right now is Heartbleed. Heartbleed is essentially a vulnerability in the OpenSSL software library. Now, the frightening thing about Heartbleed is that it doesn't really matter which browser you're using, what device you're using. If you're connecting or interacting with a site or service that has still that vulnerable version, any data that is inputted can be transmitted at risk of compromise. Now, the SSL service itself is to provide communication security and privacy for applications, whether that be web access, email, instant message, or the VPN. So what was happening is Users that were acting as attackers or hackers can eavesdrop on communications that are being sent over the internet. They will steal the data directly from the services and impersonate services. And users, by creating a fake website, by being able to steal the security certificates, making the website look like a real and authentic website. And once information is entered into said website, they would be able to take advantage of this, and they would be able to get names, passwords, any content that was being entered would be exposed. The news has hyped it up quite a bit. Estimates are 11 to 17% of websites have been vulnerable, and most of them have deployed the necessary patch. It's if users are still accessing websites that have not used the patch yet that they may be at risk. So I just wanted to wrap up with giving the examples of the 15 worst data breaches of the 21st century. Basically, this is to show that any company, large or small, can be affected, and that every company needs to be responsible and complete their due diligence in making sure that their security systems are up to date. So, Heartland Payment Systems, credit cards have been exposed. TJ Maxx had credit cards exposed. Epsilon had names, emails of customers all across several retail stores, with huge financial institutions being taken. RSA Security, 40 million employee records. Stuxnet, they have their concerns where information was exposed. The Department of Veterans Affairs, names, social security numbers, date of birth, all of this information in regards to veterans or active duty military personnel as well as their spouses were taken. Sony PlayStation had accounts hacked. They were said to have lost down. EST Soft, they had personal information exposed. Gawker Media, email addresses, passwords. Even Google and other Silicon Valley companies had VeriSign, card systems, credit cards being exposed. AOL had information taken. Monster had information in regards to job seekers taken. And Fidelity had information stolen regarding customer records, credit card banking, and personal information. We need to realize that every company is at risk, whether they be large or small, from Google to AOL to Apple, or even just the general internet themselves with the Heartbleed. The risk can be external or internal, and companies really need to be continuously reevaluating security measures, especially as technology continues to evolve. The CIOs need to continue to be up to date on the new methods of how information technology is being compromised, whether this be keeping an eye on the news, watching how competitors are being compromised, in order to stay on top of how they're protecting themselves as well as their customers' information.